Well, good morning. This is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred. Really glad you could join me today out here in the vegetable garden. It's a beautiful day here the Lord has provided in Pennsylvania, Zone 6. In fact, it's currently 71 degrees outside and low humidity, so it's just a wonderful time to be out in the garden today. Well, today I wanted to share with you 6 quick tips on how to grow sweet potatoes in your vegetable garden. So thanks for joining me today out here in the garden. As a society, we've really become disconnected from our very roots, from the earth itself. We have grocery stores on almost every corner. And so how wonderful it is and what a blessing it is to be able to grow our own food in our backyard. And my hope here at Plant Smart Living is to help everyone find their inner farmer and to teach them how easy gardening can really be, to educate people, to inform them, to inspire people to grow their own food in their backyards. Well, my wife and I just love sweet potatoes, and so we really look forward every year to growing them in our garden. And so I'm going to be discussing these 6 quick tips over there at my garden structure. It's kind of like my outdoor office. So why don't you follow me along over there? I sure am enjoying this nice low humidity weather. Well, sweet potatoes certainly are an interesting vegetable. If you think about most vegetables or plants out in the garden, and they're started by a little teeny tiny seed. Now think of the seed, it's a living embryo. It's in its dormant stage until you plant it in the soil, and then you water it, and it needs the sun, and then you have the blessing to nurture and care for that little plant as it matures into a much larger plant. Of course, it's going to just produce a massive amount of vegetables for us. Sweet potatoes are started by slips. And slips are shoots that are grown from a mature potato. You can either order your slips online or maybe from a local garden nursery. I ended up getting mine from Ray's Greenhouse, located in Telford, PA. I ended up planting 40 slips in my garden this year. You know, we just love the yam variety. I've grown the Red Jersey and the Beauregard sweet potato, but yams ended up being my favorite. They ended up being my biggest bang for my buck. I think I did a video where I harvested 38 pounds of sweet potatoes for $1.50. And so sweet potatoes are also nice. You don't have to hill them. Your typical white potato or your red Norland potatoes or Yukon potatoes, you have to hill them twice during the growing season. So quick tip number 1 would be sweet potatoes are a tropical plant, which means they're very frost sensitive. So you want to find out when your last frost date is in your area and maybe wait like 3 to 4 weeks before you plant your sweet potato slips in your soil. Now here in my gardens this year, I ended up planting mine like the 3rd week in May. We've had an extremely, well, we had a couple warm weeks of warm weather, and so I planted mine like the 3rd week, and so far they're doing really well. Quick tip number 2 would be prepare your soil. Now you want to have a nice, loose, fertile soil. You don't want those roots to have any type of resistance in the soil. If it's nice and loose, it's going to produce nice, large tubers. Now here in my garden, I grow my vegetables in my composted leaf mulch that I amend with topsoil. Now I end up buying that from Barnside Compost. Now I have it amended with topsoil because it adds additional minerals to the soil. So what I do in my gardens is I end up going through all my garden beds using my garden fork. And I work at both directions. That garden fork reaches down to about 12 inches. And so the further your roots can reach out far and wide, the more nutrients they're going to take up from the soil, resulting in a larger, healthier plant that's just going to produce a larger harvest, which is something all of us gardeners really look forward to. Quick tip number 3 would be planting your slips. And so you want to space your slips anywhere from 12 to 18 inches apart, and your rows maybe 2 to 3 feet apart. Here in my gardens, they're probably about 2 feet apart. And then what you want to do is just take a hand trowel and dig a hole maybe 3 to 4 inches deep, maybe 3 inches in diameter, and then just put your slip in, maybe halfway up. You can determine where the leaves start on your slip, and then just backfill it and just gently tamp around the soil to firm that soil up nice. My soil in my garden is loose most of the time, so I end up just using my hand as a trowel in most of the time when I plant out in the garden, but I just enjoy caking that soil and just letting it work through my fingers. Unfortunately, I end up having a lot of dirt underneath my nails at the end of the day, but I end up having to keep my nails shorter during the growing season. Quick tip number 4 would be keep your soil moist. So after you're done planting your slips in the garden, you want to water them in thoroughly. Make sure you get all the air pockets out around the plant. And then maybe water them every day. Maybe the 2nd week, you can maybe water them every other day until they get their feet established in the soil. Once they get their feet established in the soil, maybe you can just give them a deep, thorough watering once a week. Now, of course, if it rains during the week, obviously you may not have to water them near as much. Quick tip number 5 would be provide trellises for your sweet potatoes. Now, sweet potatoes produce a beautiful, lush, green vine. It can branch out or grow out anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5 feet, maybe from where you originally planted. But one way to get around that is to grow vertically in your garden. That way you can grow a lot more food, not only just with sweet potatoes, but any type of vining plant. You can provide a trellis. And so say you planted 2 rows of sweet potatoes, you could just provide a trellis right in the middle and then just slowly train up your vine to grow up the trellis, and it's going to save you a lot of space in your garden. Quick tip number 6 would be how to protect your sweet potato plants from deer. Well, here in my garden, immediately after I finished planting my sweet potatoes, I had some like 4-foot by 4 foot or 5 foot by 4 foot wire section remnants that I use to lay over all my plants, just like an arch. Sweet potatoes especially, you know, they have a nice sweet leaf and the deer seem to love them. Another way you can deter the deer from eating your sweet potato slips is to use a floating row cover. And I talk about row covers all the time in my garden as a preventive measure to keep the aphids off them and off your plants, and that cabbage butterfly that you see, that white butterfly flying around your garden lays these eggs under your brassica plants, and then it turns into a cabbage worm which just destroys, you know, the leaves on your plants. And so using a floating row cover is one way that you can deter those deer from eating those leaves. Also, at harvest time, when I go to harvest my sweet potatoes, I actually end up having some of the deer come in and eat the leaves off of my plants. And so that, to me, that they're actually helpful at that point in time. But anytime I plant something my plants are small out in the garden in the beginning, I end up putting wire fence sections over all my plants. Also, during the growing season, I almost have like a wall of weeds that grow around my garden here, and so I do see deer out in the woods, but most of the time they're out eating other wild plants out there on the ground. So why don't we go over to my 1 4 foot by 8 foot section I have here and take a look at my beautiful sweet potato plants growing in my garden. You can see there I have the wire fence sections over the sweet potato slips in order to protect them from the deer. But they're growing nice and healthy. They're real happy in my composted leaf mulch that's amended with topsoil. You also want to make sure your sweet potatoes receive a good 8 hours of sunlight. We're starting to get a little bit of rain here. We have a passing cloud. So anyhow, I hope this video was able to give you some tips and ideas on how to grow sweet potatoes in your garden. And sweet potatoes take anywhere from 3 to 4 months to harvest. Typically when you see the leaves starting to turn yellow, or right before your first frost, you can harvest them. Some people even wait for a little while right after their first frost. So if you have any questions or comments about this video, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And you can also visit us at PlantSmartLiving.com. And there you can learn more about gardening and also how you can reclaim and restore your health by adopting a whole food, plant-based, vegan lifestyle. Well, anyhow, I hope you have a wonderful day and a bountiful garden season. So until next time, this is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred.